good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the United States or around the world. My name is Eddie Jean Hall Jr., and you are listening to The Urban Therapist. I am your host, and joining me today, as always, is my good friend and the co-host of The Urban Therapist and the producer, of course, Mr. Lewis Rhodes. How you doing today, Lou? Lou? Oh, there you are. Check it, man.
I'm trying to find the right buttons. When
No,
we have a little hiatus in between shows, I have to make sure I remember where we are, what we're doing.
that's all right. Listen, I'm just glad you're here. And folks, we are just excited that you are with us. And we just ask that you please stay with us. We know we've been having a little break between shows, like Lewis says. But you know what, man? There's a phrase people used to use called life happens. And I never did get into that phrase. I never did like it until recently. Some things started happening, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what people mean when they say life happens. So, we've had some life happening challenges recently, but I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that we're here, and I'm glad that you all have joined us today as we continue our discussion. I'm a little sleepy. What you watching? Is this part? This is part three, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is part three of what you watching, and we're calling this "What You Watching Again." So listen, we're going to get right to it. We got some stats we're going to start with, and I remember I told you in our last show we were going to talk about why pornography is so addictive. So I tell you what, Lewis, without any further ado, let's just get right to it. Okay, let me just give you a few updated stats that I think you all might like. First, talking about how popular pornography is. I got a few stats I want to share with you. We're going again with what you looking at again. First, the global pornography industry is worth around 97 billion. That's 97 billion dollars. In the United States alone, the pornography industry generates from 12 to 14 billion dollars in annual revenue. Now that's just in the US. So you see, worldwide, 97 billion. In the US, 12 to 14 billion annually. That's a lot of money. There are over 4.2 million adult websites. Keep this rolling for me, man. I think I got about 9 points total I'm going to bring out. In 2018, one porn website, and I know the name of the porn website, but I didn't put it on there because I don't want you going to look for it. One porn website saw 63,992 new visitors per minute. Can you believe that, Lou? That's per minute, and a total of 33.5 billion total visitors that year. That was just one porn website. One. Then the world's top three porn sites have a combined total of over 5.81 billion site visits per month. Every minute, these same top three porn sites receive 134,491 visits. These numbers blow my mind.
Wow.
63,992 new visitors per minute, 33.5 billion total visitors that year, and then 5.81 81 billion site visits per month for all three of those sites combined. Now, this is going to blow you away. In 2018, there were 109 billion, 12 million, 68,000 videos watched on just one porn website. That's about more than 14 videos per person on the planet. Did I read those numbers right, Lou? Because I kept looking at it when I was putting this together. That is 109 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
12 million, 68,000 videos watched on just one porn website.
Wow.
Just one in that 1 year. That averages out to 14 videos per person on the planet. Do you realize how many people are looking at this stuff? I should say, how many of us? Then look at this next one. Over 5 billion, 824 million, 699,200 hours of porn were watched on one porn site in 2018. That's nearly 665 centuries of content that people watched on one site in just 1 year.
That's incredible.
Over 5 billion, 5.8 billion hours on one site.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. 52% of online pornography consumers in the United States are between the ages of 35 and 49. And I think, Lou, in our last show, you were sharing with us, what did you call it? Did you call it the Great Divide, or when you were talking about the differential, the age gap differences between the generations who
Oh,
use
no, digital
technology?
natives are people who have born into technology versus
Okay,
digital immigrants are people who have seen technology implemented during their lifetime.
that was it. Digital natives and
Mm-hmm.
digital immigrants. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but so that 35 to 49, when it says 52% of online pornography consumers in the United States are aged 35 to 49, that's around that digital immigrant piece, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then it says the most commonly observed age group consuming internet pornography is 18 to 24-year-olds, with 77% reporting recent consumption.
Right. And those would be considered the digital natives.
Those are the digital natives. Okay. So we got the natives and we got the immigrants. And the natives and the immigrants in the world of pornography are taking up a lot of time. Now, here's something that's going to catch you. Viewership of female friendly porn has risen 1,400% from 2013 to 2017. Now, I bring that out because I thought that was a very interesting statistic, because pornography has basically always been looked at more as a male dominated type of industry or entertainment. But more and more women are looking at porn. And listen, when it comes to money, people are going to figure out how to make money. And so they are developing and adjusting and making things more porn that women would be more interested in. All right. That goes back to what we just said. Now, roughly, this is a roughly 1/3 of porn viewers are women. 9% of porn users in the United States, this really got me. 9% of porn users in the United States are children under 12 years old. But that doesn't surprise me when we talk about technology and how our children are growing up learning to use technology. It's so easy for them to get to it. And then this last stat, roughly 200,000 Americans are considered porn addicts. And trust me, that's an underestimate because pornography is one of those things where people are concerned about talking about it. Some people are afraid to talk about it, get help because of the way they're afraid they're going to be judged. And that's something we're going to get into a little later on. But these were just some of the stats on pornography. So as you can see, it is a $1 billion business worldwide in the United States alone. So what's the reason? What's the reason why? What makes pornography so addictive and so dangerous? And it's not just people say, oh, you nasty. Y'all just like looking at nasty stuff. It's a whole lot more to it than that. And so I want to introduce you to something. Some of you may have heard of this before. This is called the Coolidge Effect. It's called the Coolidge Effect. Now, the Coolidge Effect, if something I want to introduce you to, there's a book. I don't know if you can see this. This book is called, I'm gonna move this way. Here we go. Your Brain on Porn. Now, this is a great book. I don't agree with everything Dr. Wilson says, but I love the information and the things he brings out. So if you ever want to do some deep research on pornography and how it affects the brain, I want to recommend that you get this book. It is a great book. Now, here's how the Coolidge Effect is described. It is the history of it. The Coolidge Effect itself gets its name from U.S. President Calvin Coolidge. He and his wife were once touring a farm. And while the president was elsewhere, the farmer proudly showed Mrs. Coolidge a rooster that could copulate with hens all day long, day after day. And then copulate means the rooster was able to get it on with any hen the farmer brought in there every day, all day. Now, Mrs. Coolidge suggested that the farmer tell that to Mr. Coolidge. Now, rumor says when the farmer did that, the president thought for a minute and then he inquired. He said, does a rooster do that with the same hen? And the farmer said, no. And so the president said, you go tell that to Mrs. Coolidge. Oh, okay. And so now from that came this theory called the Coolidge Effect. So here we go, Luke. So we're going to break it down on these slides. The Coolidge Effect is based on studies of male animals and respective receptive female mates. So they studied some rats, goats, rams. So here we go. So for example, if a male rat is introduced to a female rat in a cage, I guess I got to leave it GP. So I guess no, that wouldn't be GP if I talked about Mickey and Minnie. So I can't use them, and I don't want to get sued by them.
You mean PG? You said GP.
What did I say?
GP.
I said GP. Yeah, this show might slide to R before we done. But for example, if a male rat is introduced to a female rat, I don't know why the Itchy and Scratchy show came to my mind, but if a male rat is introduced to a female rat in the cage, initially there's a very high copulation rate. So in other words, when the female rat first meets male rat, first meets female rat, say, hey, yo, how you doing? Introduces himself, and they start having sex.
Right.
And they having sex a lot. Okay? Now, what happens is this. Though the female rat will still apparently be receptive to her mate, the male rat gets a little tired of that particular female and starts displaying little or no libido. In other words, he starts losing some interest. When they first got together, they were doing it all the time on a regular basis. And then, the male rat, she was still ready, but he wasn't. So now they tried this experiment. No, but
Okay.
let me stay there.
Not
No,
yet.
no, go to
Gotcha.
the next one. You good?
Oh,
You good?
okay. Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep this, as you said, PG-13.
GP. Try to keep it GP.
Hey, I was thinking about the rat. The rat was trying to do some general population. Okay. So now, so here's what they did. If the original female is removed and a fresh female supplied, the male rat responds with a renewed sense of desire for sexual activity. So if they take that female out, put a new female rat in, my boy's up and he's ready to go. And it's reported that this process can be repeated until the male rat nearly dies of exhaustion. So they kept putting a new female rat in, and he would get it on with that new female rat. He got to the point, I don't feel like her anymore. All right, they take out a new one, put in a new female rat. Boom. He get back up and go for it. And he would do this till he would pass out.
Was there
So now,
any rat Viagra in play?
no, no rat Viagra. This was all natural. This was Rat Man. He was just on top. Okay, I guess maybe I shouldn't put it like that. But yeah. So it was natural. That
Purely
thrill,
natural.
that excitement of every time it was a new female rat. So go to the next slide for me. So it says this experiment has been repeated with sheep, rams, cattle, all with similar results. Okay, so they just didn't use one just rats. And I read somewhere where they were talking about how the different parts. Well, I'll go there later. In each experiment, the male tires of the initial female, but is revitalized when introduced to a new female. And we talk about animals here. Okay, so now let's talk about now. So that's the Coolidge effect. Okay, we talked about the hens. That rooster could get it on because the farmer said it was always a fresh hen. The rat, every time you brought in a fresh female rat, even though he might have been tired, he would be revitalized. What does the Coolidge effect have to do with pornography? Easy. Here you go. So, everybody's familiar with the word dopamine. And you know what? Let me do this. Let me just read this to you. Again, this is from Dr. Wilson's book. It says, although dopamine is sometimes referred to as the pleasure molecule, it is actually about seeking and searching for pleasure and not pleasure itself. Thus, dopamine rises with anticipation. So what happens, and I think I got another slide on here, Lou, as we continue on. When we're watching pornography, we get a surge of dopamine. And that surge, that excitement that we're seeking from the novelty is the key. So listen, novelty is the key to stimulating the Coolidge effect. And pornography, especially online pornography, provides an endless source of novel sexual stimuli. So even though you're not involved in the act itself physically, our brains looking and watching and seeing the dopamine spikes. It kicks in. And so when the dopamine kicks in, my brain is like, wow, it's excited. You get that feel that, you searching after that feel good. Go to the next slide for me. Now they did a study in Australia. Australia. Hold on, man. I gotta get a drink of water. I don't know what's going on with me this morning. Oh, I guess maybe my dopamine is up talking about this. So, they did an example, a research study performed in Australia. Check this out, Lou. Here's what they did. It's not moving. Yeah, so there you go. You're gonna have to flow with me on these, okay? Because I broke these down over several slides. It says researchers displayed the same erotic film repeatedly to a group of test subjects to record the level of sexual arousal for each viewing. Okay, so now this was actual research study done. Now this was done on people. These are not rats. These are people. After 18 viewings, there you go. It's okay. Okay, the test subjects showed a progressive decrease in sexual arousal with each viewing of the same erotic film. So, in other words, when they first showed it, the excitement and the dopamine shot up, and every time they showed it, the dopamine would shoot up. But as they continued to show it, and the dopamine didn't shoot up as high. And it says after 18 viewings, as the test subjects began to fall asleep, notice what they did. They introduced novel erotica or new erotica for the 19th and 20th viewing. Now remember, everybody started falling asleep, right? When they did this, guess what happened? The subjects became excited both mentally and physically. In other words, the dopamine shot back up, and it said, and women showed similar effects. So this is not just a male thing. We're talking about what happens in our brains when that pleasure seeking, when we have that novelty, that variety. We're talking about this is the science behind what happens in looking at pornography. It said the subjects became excited both mentally and physically. Man, they were falling asleep. And then as soon as they showed them something new, it was like dun 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 dun, bam, and they were back up. Kick that next slide for me. Now, so here we go. And folks, I want you to remember, we know that some of you are watching the video and some of you are listening to this without the video. So that's why we're making sure we cover everything. Just imagine at the click of a mouse having thousands of movie clips and pictures of erotica available in the span of just a few minutes. Our brains are going, what? 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 You know, why are you laughing at me, man? I'm just saying. And it's important for us to talk about this because, listen, as parents, grandparents, husbands, wives, everybody, we've got to understand there's a science behind this addiction, and it's easier than you think to get hooked, and it's harder than you may think to quit. And it's not just, what are the word? What am I looking for? Again, let me go back to just say, putting it like this. This is the science.
Right. It's not just morality. It's
That's
science.
the word I'm looking for.
Right. Because that's where a lot of people come in on certain types of addictions, like a pornography addiction, and people think that it has to do with your low moral fortitude, but it actually is as much just a behavioral stimuli reaction to the idea of you continually introducing, like you said, new novel stimuli into your environment that is of a excitable nature. So, I mean, so in a way, you could almost like we could change this whole experiment and look at it from a something that you find pleasurable. Let's say that you love roller coasters, right? And you love the thrill of roller coasters, right? You could ride the same roller coaster 20 times. And what's going to happen to you after you ride that same roller coaster 20 times? You're going to go,
Don't get bored with it.
it doesn't do for me what it used to do, right? But as soon as someone says, "Oh, you can go to that roller coaster," oh, there's a new roller coaster, and the very first time you ride that roller coaster, it's like starting over again. And to go with that same analogy, if you were in a park that had unlimited roller coasters, where you never had to ride the same roller coaster more than 2 times, you would consistently be thrilled over and over and over because every ride would be a new ride and your brain wouldn't be able to adjust to the lowering of your levels because you're getting used to the same routine.
You're getting used to that dopamine shot. That dopamine shot. And here's the thing, because we are naturally sexual beings. When I say we are natural, I mean we're created to enjoy sex. It's natural. So having that at your fingertips, it's not the same fight as, because I was reading, it's like, see, drugs are artificial stimulant, but we're designed to become aroused by our vision. You know, what you love about your wife, what you love about your husband, what you love about your significant other, those features about he or she that turn you on, that's natural. And that's part of that rush. So now just think about being able to make that rush happen, and our brains start looking for that rush. And now here's a way to have that in a matter of seconds. And then, like you said, if I'm in a roller coaster park and I can keep riding a different roller coaster, so just think, we can sit behind a computer, laptop, or phone and have that dopamine surge over, 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 and over again. And this is what we're dealing with when we're talking about the Coolidge effect and when we're talking about the dangers of pornography. Listen, I know it's probably about time for us to get ready to wrap it up. So we're going to come back with some more information on talking about the Coolidge effect. And then I've got a few questions, to challenge you with. Because here's the thing before we go. Listen, the thing about addiction, any of us can be addicted to anything. Okay? Every addiction can be overcome. But first, it takes recognizing the fact that I am addicted. So we're going to have in the next show, we're going to have some questions to ask Lou. We're going to, talk about those questions, for people to ask themselves to see if they may be addicted to pornography. And I want you to understand there's help out there for you if you are. And if you are, just be honest with yourself. Don't be too ashamed to ask for help. You've been listening to The Urban Therapist. You can find us on all the major media sites. I am your host, Eddie Jean Hall Jr., along with my good friend and the co-host, Mr. Lewis Rhodes. So, Lou, we're going to head out, and then we're going to come back. I mean, I almost made a joke. I said, because we want to keep the novelty going. We want to keep people coming back. You know, we want to. I'll see y'all next time.